Welcome back, everybody. We are here for another one of your questions about work. And an ongoing theme that we've had is about how, as individuals, we can be less isolated in the workspace. And so today, for those of you who are joining for the first time, I'm Roy. I'm a startup investor in the future of work. And I'm here with Geisha Haas today, who is the founder of Dreamers and Doers, which is a community of women who are entrepreneurs. And for those who are working at a company and thinking about how do I, if I feel lonely or I feel like I want to be in more of a shared environment with my coworkers, how do I create a community for those with whom I work? And thank you for, I forgot to say, thank you for joining us.
Yes, of course. And I will give some advice that might be controversial, but also very effective. So
we like people taking chances. So that's great.
Vulnerability is really the secret sauce to community, because community is all about giving a damn about each other. And it's really hard to do when you just focus on work. And granted, in a work context, there are some guardrails you should keep in mind. You can also get in trouble by being too personal. But vulnerability really helps you foster connections to others. And if you are, let's say, a manager, being able to say like, hey, even I got this wrong, or what's everyone else's thoughts like that. And the beautiful power is the moment you create community, you unlock this massive value, because suddenly everyone on the team joins forces and is able to produce much more by feeling connected to each other.
So let me ask, just, how do you, in practice, find that line of how do I begin to open up in a way that feels appropriate?
Yes. So I'll warn you that it always feels slightly uncomfortable. Then you're like in the right zone. When it's slightly uncomfortable, it's vulnerable. And then obviously, like, there's certain common sense parts. Like, you shouldn't like share something that's like just not work inappropriate, that's offline. But anytime you show that you're human, that's where it comes down to. Like, you can, talk about how you had a really bad day with your kids, or how, really silly mistakes maybe that weren't current, but that were a few years ago. But the moment we drop the facade and we don't try to just like outsmart each other and just try to like be the best at everything, that's actually when we do better. And we are able to foster these connections where other people start trusting you. The best communities are all about trust.
And you were even sharing beforehand the magical prop holding up your plant behind you.
Exactly. I even shared this on social media, but I was like, is this appropriate? And I got the green light, but there's a diaper pail that this plant is standing on. And this makes me so much more human.
Well, and I also think this phase of working from home has just given so many excuses to meet, our favorite coworkers. When my daughter comes in and asks me, like, which key do you press to hit print on this thing again? It's like anybody whose nose is bent out of joint by seeing that, well, for me at least, it's an indicator of the kind of person with whom I don't want to work. Let me push it one half step further then. Let's assume you're in a workplace where you're blessed with the fact that there's generally an environment where people are not wearing the mask of like, I'm doing great all the time, and they're willing to show the things, whether they're work decisions or personal choices that they feel uncomfortable about or vulnerable about. They've all watched the Brene Brown TED Talk. They're there, but that feels like a precondition to community. It doesn't actually create community. What are some tangible steps that somebody could take beyond, once they've unlocked that with their own vulnerability and that of others, to begin to really build community with others?
Yes. And there's one misconception. Like, oftentimes people think shared experiences equals community. But the key part to community is the connections between each other. And what I see companies get wrong oftentimes, like, hey, let's go to this great show together, or hey, let's do this. And then, great, we've all watched the same show together, but have I really connected with each other, right? Like, no. So you could take that one same experience and do something ahead of time that is a little bit vulnerable, or doing a follow-up, and really being intentional about these connections among the coworkers is crucial, and building that aspect in there, because vulnerability can actually be really awkward if it's not done correctly.
Totally.
So having that structure and always leading, like always being the first one, starting out with an example that allows others to open up. And really amazing tool, personal and professional, is asking questions. One that is a go-to for me is asking people, so what's been the highlight and the low light of your week, of your month? And it just allows
them to do that around the dinner table in my family. It works great. My kids occasionally feel that we're part of a family community.
Right? It works. It's an amazing community tool.
Totally. I love that. I mean, one of my observations is that it's important for the people who are in leadership roles to set those vulnerability examples, because you sort of set the ceiling of how comfortable being vulnerable other people feel. And then but the reality is the actual formation of those shared experiences and bonds, it is a trial and error process. I often find of like, look, in some places you're going to use software. You know, we invested in companies like Icebreaker that like, this is literally what they do.
I was about to, actually, I was going to plug them because we love using them. Women Orbit, you have to look into them with a double I. Orbit.ai is an amazing tool for that.
Great. We love hearing about new tools. So sometimes it's that, sometimes it's going to be in-person stuff, and not every community within a workplace is for everybody. And the thing that I just say is I try to pay attention to when those communities replicate social structures that are exclusive, whether they're exclusive on like, you know, sex or race lines, like that could be absolutely horrible. But even just like the cool kids clique can sometimes be a horrible thing at work of like everybody goes every Thursday night for drinks and you're not invited. And some of that is just human beings. But I find it's such a process of trial and error. There's no one right way to do it, but that anybody working in an organization ought to be in a position where they can begin to create community, at least around them.
Yes, and you do so much better at work if you have that skill set of building community, because you suddenly—
I love that. I totally agree with that. I think that's absolutely true. All right, Keisha. Well, that was great. Not advice. I mean, even if it was advice in the sense of sharing your personal experience, and look forward to having this again. And for everybody who's here for the first time, the reason we say this is not advice is because usually advice is the person trying to tell you, you know, their life story and hoping that you replicate it or trying to live an experiment through you. This is sharing experiences, although we do sometimes have experts, genuine experts who can share advice, and that works too. To be continued. Thank you.